All right. So, just go ahead and state your name and your occupation.
Kevin Lucero Less,
Yeah.
artist.
All right. So, I got a couple questions for you about sort of the indie distribution life, how it is to be an indie filmmaker, but specifically on distribution end. So, first question I have here is, what has your experience been like with indie distribution? You know, have you found a method that works for you when you're distributing your films?
Well, first of all, I have to preface by saying that, as I hate the word actor, but that is primarily my thing. I have been on plenty of other projects where they have, and I say they because I'm not the director and not the producer of some of those films, that they have gotten distribution.
Right.
So, for us, I think it's gone very well. For example, with the film festival circuit, so we've been to some of the the top 5. We've been there, Sundance in particular. So after official selection at Sundance, Apple met with the producer and the director, and I was there because I was the lead, but I was just in the background listening. And they offered some limited distribution deals with selected films from this would have been 2007 Sundance. And they meet you in the lobby, which is a traditional thing in a film festival, and they offer you a deal. So at the time, I can't tell you what they made. That would be illegal. But at the time, it was $2.99 to download from iTunes, and it had its own channel. So there was you go to iTunes and you could click on Sundance, and it had the banner, and there were all the films that were picked by their festival director and Robert Redford, of course, and then the Apple executives who were there. So the deal that they gave them was it was 50-50, which is unheard of, but it was 50-50, and so with that kind of platform, that's Apple. So that's potentially the globe, right? That could be 1 billion people, easy. So if you only get 1 million people to download for $2.99, and you get 50% of that is very good. Now I got paid my fee as the lead, but I did not get back end. I mean, none of us. When you make a film, very rarely do they. Oh my God, we're gonna get distribution. As in looking at that now, I should have had something in my contract that said if that ever happened, and now I would. But so I personally didn't get any of the funds from that. But for the film itself, for the production itself, and for the producer and the director, I think that they did very well. Is all I have to say. They did very well on that. As far as the whole thing is different now. You guys have it really easy because you can have self-distribution, which is kind of a luxury. It's a curse because there's too much competition, but it's a luxury because you guys can go on to Distribber. I don't know if you know about Distribber. So Distribber is it's a web platform where if you sign up and pay a fee, they will automatically do the legwork to get you Hulu approved, Netflix approved, iTunes approved, and if you don't get in, you get your money back, some of it, because you got to pay, because there's legal fees involved, there's accounting involved, there's all that kind of stuff. But it was started by people like yourself, myself, artists, not Hollywood people, independent people, and they were like, this is, I can't use any bad language, this is beep, that we're giving 70, 80, 90% of our profits to distribution companies. We should get that. And so they do. It's 100% last time I checked.
Okay.
So if you get onto Netflix, which is the biggest SVOD. So SVOD, I don't know what you people do. So there's subscription, video on demand, there's video on demand, there's many different platforms. I don't want to get non-sequitur on that. So the point is if you go through them, they'll give you 100% if you get that. Now, it has to be curated, which would mean they're not just going to take anything. They're going to look at what's going to sell, and they're going to look at, quality, of course. So, I mean, if you shot something that didn't have the best aesthetics to it or the best file, they would probably curate you out. But some of them are less stringent. So, like, Netflix, I believe, is less stringent than iTunes because Apple is a software company. So if your file isn't tip-top, then they're going to deny you, not necessarily on narrative or directing or acting or writing, but because the actual file itself is crap. Because that's what they specialize in. It has to be like perfect, visually and audio. So I don't know if that answers your question, but so for me, it's been great. I mean, I have no complaints, but I'm not, I'm not a director.
Right.
That's not what I would consider myself. I direct when I can't get my people to want to go on board, or if I just have a passion project of my own, I do it. But I'm not somebody who sits down, pens the script, and then directs it on my own. So I've been in projects that have been very well. I've had the privilege of working on many films that have gone to great festivals as a jumping point to distribution. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Actually answered a couple others I hear. So you mentioned you did go to Sundance. I've heard from a lot of, specifically Carl mentioned this, and definitely Linda, who worked for Indie Rights. They talked a lot about sort of the dream of going to Sundance and making it big from there. Yeah, I get.
Okay. Let's talk about fake dreams.
Yeah. So since you've actually gone through that, unlike Carl and Linda, like what is it actually like, as opposed to the idea of what really happens there?
Yeah. So just like anything else in the world, people assume that it could apply to anything. If you're an artist and you get into the best gallery in New York, it doesn't mean anyone's going to buy it. If you get so Sundance, I think the numbers are like these days something like 100,000. I'm probably wrong on this. 100,000 submissions. They take, I think, 100 in all categories spanned. Out of those films, I believe there's only going to be probably 6 that get distribution. So, I mean, let's be more specific. Does it do wonders for you on a CV platform, your resume? Of course it does. That will open doors for you that competition-wise, people are like, oh, I was at Bob's Film Festival. Like, well, I've done stuff at Sundance. Of course, that's going to attract interest. But as far as like, now I'm going to be rich and famous, it's art in America. And the reality of art in America is Americans, they look at art as like a luxury or an entertainment. They do not look at it as a part of their lives. So if you were in Italy, Spain, Germany, their culture, art it's enabled. It's a part of their culture. There are government grants. Canada, they'll pay for a film. Cronenberg gets his films paid for by the government. It's a totally, I think Americans look at it as, God, I buy that painting. It looks great on my wall next to my sofa, and let's have a party so I can show it off, and aren't I great? It doesn't fill the intellectual, ideological, part of their lives. It's kind of just like a cherry on top.
Yeah.
So if you go to Sundance or something like that, and you think that like your dreams are going to be made after that, I mean, there are films that have gone there in competition and have even won. They've won a jury award, or they've won that kind of stuff. And after that, it's you're back to the drawing board, because that's the truth of being an artist, is that every day of your life, you're starting over from scratch. There's a saying in Hollywood, you're only as good as your last film. But that's very true. Alan Parker is a genius British director. Films like Angel Heart, Evita, which I don't care much for, but the guy does solid films. Birdie. He makes a film called Life of David Gale, starring scumbag Spacey, a bunch of other big names, Kate Winslet, and everybody hated it. And after that, his career was like decimated. He never worked again. I think 2016, he said, I'm quitting. So even when you're in the big leagues, even when you have theatrical distribution, which The Life of David Gale did, every single project you're starting over again. Because the bottom line is, people hated the film so much, he could never get another film funded again. Now, he could do stuff on his own, But it's a big step when you're like this huge director, and now I'm just going to go make stuff and put it on Vimeo.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge step down.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, forget it. I retire. You know, obviously he had made enough money to take care of himself and his family. He didn't need to do it anymore. But I think it would be extremely naive of everyone, including students. And I wish more schools would teach this. I went to a school where on the first day, they look at people, these are actors,
Mm-hmm.
they look at people in the audience like, God, you have a weight problem.
Mm-hmm.
The chances of you making a living doing this in this country,
Yeah.
you should get into voiceover work. You should do stuff like that. Because the truth is that, if you're not supermodel looking and stuff like that, it's going to be really hard for you to make a living doing that thing. There's always going to be somebody prettier.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be somebody who has more talent. There's always going to be somebody who has an in. Nepotism, luck,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah. So to answer your question, I think you'd be really naive to think that your career is set because you went to Sundance. Because even people who don't have to deal with festivals, they have distribution from the get-go through a studio, like Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
If the film bombs, your career is already in jeopardy. And that is with studio backing, theatrical. So if you think Sundance is gonna save your soul, I think you're a little naive.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that's not a huge accolade and a huge accomplishment, because it will open doors for you that frankly you're not going to have anywhere else. I mean, that would be like the end all be all of festivals. Some people say Cannes, but that's not true, because Cannes does a lot of Hollywood stuff too, and they do a lot of international huge budgets. Sundance, the paradigm of Sundance and the ideology of Sundance is supposed to be for the people who do not have a voice to get their work shown in a very prestigious festival by people who can do things for you. I mean, it's founders, Robert Redford, for God's sakes. I mean, and when you're up there, I mean, it's more Hollywood than Hollywood. You're walking down the street and you see huge stars, huge people, and you're like, oh my God, and then there goes Ron Howard to just walk past Ron Howard.
Mm-hmm.
So they're obviously watching your stuff. So I would think the dream would really be, instead of just getting into Sundance, and I got in, wow, I got it, isn't that awesome on my resume? The true dream is to have your film show at Sundance, have somebody in the audience, and not even a distribution executive, have somebody like Scorsese. So like Wes Anderson, and I once again, this may be a falsity in terms of the story, but he made a short, Bottle Rocket. This would have been like 95, 96, somewhere in there. He made a short, he got it into a festival, I think it was Austin. Scorsese, I believe, saw it through one way or another and was like, let's make it a feature. And now Wes Anderson is Wes Anderson. That's all it really took, was one person who had the connections, the passion, the eye to go, wow, this kid is special. And the rest is history. I mean, Tarantino, he got into a Sundance lab. So Sundance is more than just a film festival. Sundance is a 365-day a year platform for artists. If you're a playwright, they have playwriting, they have plays, they do film development, they do all kinds of stuff. And if you get into their process, then you can do that. I believe Tarantino got his script approved. They took him into the Sundance lab, which is summer. And, he got to workshop it with Harvey Keitel, and eventually that led to the casting, and eventually the shooting, and then I believe he got official selection after that and won the jury prize. And the rest is history. So I may have wandered on that question.
No,
how was it for me personally? It was great. It was fantastic, because it was, it was a chance to be with a group of people, an enclave of people who have the same beliefs that I do. That most of the people there are maybe not as anti-Hollywood as I am, but they're definitely artists. And they're going to make work that is edgy and different and dangerous Like, I don't think anybody who shows there is, they're not, I don't think they're hoping to make Bumblebee, you know, the Transformers spinoff. I think what they really have a passion for is telling personal stories. Just like Francis Ford Coppola used to say in the 70s. And that's what Sundance is all about, telling stories that are, you know, edgy and dangerous. So, I don't know, it was great.
Yeah.
But all the festivals are great. I don't care if you go to Bob's Festival. I went to, I did the Back Alley Festival, which was, you know, not much to write home about. I did. There was one in Tucson called the Loft Festival. I think anywhere an artist can show their work to an audience who is on board. And what I mean by on board is they're not sitting there with all this cynicism, oh, what kind of camera is that? No, they're there to participate with the work. Like, that's a blessing. Because otherwise, you know, you're just making it for yourself, which is okay too, but I think, you know, festivals are great, period. And it's gotten a lot harder. So, you know, that's one of the disadvantages. You guys are so lucky that you have digital. Because when I first started, you know, it was people had to shoot film. I mean, that's what you had. I mean, I guess you could shoot VHS, you could shoot a high 8, but it was garbage. But now everybody, and this is to a fault, everybody's a photographer, everybody's a filmmaker. Because everybody has an addiction where they can shoot on that thing, and they're getting better and better every year. So it really, the competition is the only downside. But I believe that if you have a good story, that's going to trump. I mean, if some guy goes out there and rents an Alexa, so what? If he doesn't have a good story, if he or she doesn't know how to direct, if he or she doesn't know how to write, if he or she has a cast that's just like phoning it in, or, you know, I casted my friends, which can be fine, but all I'm saying is I don't care if that's shot on like a crap Best Buy $200 camera, that is going to get more play than something that is great looking but terrible sound or terrible story or blah blah blah. And David Lynch has already proved that, you know, with the Inland Empire. Is like, you know, why? I don't need to use this. I'm David Lynch. I'll go buy a $200 camera and make Inland Empire. And he did, and it works. You know, the proof is there. You don't have to spend a lot of money. So anyway, I should probably, that's a long segue on that.
It's good to have that stuff.
That's just Sundance.
So I know you love the 70s. I know you love the
films of the 70s.
The films of the 70s, the environment of the 70s, how, you know, more friendly to art. Do you think with the advent of the internet and the idea that, like, anyone can make a film and anyone can get their stuff out there, you think that kind of mindset is coming back, that's giving more friendly to the artists? Because not necessarily everyone's on an equal platform, but there is more support for smaller creators?
Yeah. You want to go on this one? Or you're recording?
Yeah. No,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I think absolutely. That's one of the things where all of us are really lucky right now, is that you can be creative. You no longer have to rely on the studios. And to be honest, the studios are beeping bricks. They are terrified, and they should be. Because once upon a time, they held the keys. If you wanted to be in the film industry, you had to go the Hollywood route. You had to. I mean, even like people like Tobe Hooper, right? Working and sweating in the Texas heat, shooting 16 millimeter, making a film that, like, nobody would ever even think that Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But, you know, they make this film, and they did such an amazing job, eventually seen by Spielberg, and like, yeah, that guy's amazing. So eventually he was brought into the fold. But, you know, in my opinion, what the net gives all of us is a way to circumvent all that nonsense. You can literally make anything you want, upload it today, and people will see it. Does that mean millions will see it? Probably not. Does that mean you're going to get paid? Definitely not. But the fact that if you're just a creator, you have those platforms available to you, I can't explain it to somebody of your age. It's like, God, when I was in high school, there was nothing like that. That the best that we could do would be like rent out a theater. You know, kind of how midnight movies came to be. You could rent out a theater, and there was no internet. You had to like make flyers and come see our film.
Yeah,
Come see our
talk to
film. Yeah, face to face, and pray that people would come and see it, or you show it in an art gallery, or you could. There were no projectors the way you know them today. You can't just take a projector, hook it up to your laptop, which didn't exist, and play it on your garage. You know, close the garage and play it on the white siding of your. You didn't do that. So, like, man, to have Vimeo, even YouTube. I mean, man, what a luxury. But you're right. The downside is you have to sift through so much garbage. Sitting on a toilet, squirrels water skiing, unboxing of my sunglasses, stupid videos by whatever. I don't want to. Yeah. All I'm saying is like if you're looking for high-end art film, Vimeo is much better than YouTube. But thank God it's there. And I'd say the same thing with the technology, like the fact that you can buy a camera for $2,000 that will do very similar files that which you would get off of, at that time, a super 35 millimeter camera. Now, film, in my opinion, is always going to look better. It has more dynamic range. It has that softer, non-digital, hard-edged look to it, so on. So that's a debate for another thing. But I believe that, like, you buy a GH4, a GH5, a Sony A7S, A7S II, A7S III. I mean, these cameras are unbelievable for that price range. The first camera I ever had was like a JVC full VHS, the full big VHS. It was my uncle's, and I would go out and make films with that. Crappy picture, crappy sound, but doing the thing, playing around with it, getting shots, and learning how to make mise en scène, and it was awesome. But compared to what all of us have today, that's just an amazing leap. But I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find a way to sift through the stuff that is not, because those aren't really narrative films either. I think it'd be awesome if there were some more entrepreneurs who were like, let's find platforms online that are extremely prestigious, like a Sundance, that have a jury, and when you get in, you can, I don't know, make money on that in a way that's more viable. Because even going Netflix and Hulu is still just an offshoot of Hollywood. Yeah, it's still mega $1 million facilities that we're still knocking on the door to get in. Like if there was an indie platform where you could go watch those types of films online and then pay those people, and I'm sure there are, but I think eventually that would be the pinnacle for online streaming. Where anybody could just do it. Now, I guess Vimeo Pro, because there's many different tiers. Vimeo Pro, I guess you can do that, and you can monetize it. And YouTube, obviously, you can do that for some of the stuff. But I guess it's a different thing. I mean, are we talking about making a living, or are we talking about just getting people to see your work? Yeah. Because people can already see your work. The hard thing is making a living in America. Because even if you have one hit, it doesn't mean they're going to go see your other ones. I mean, Francis Ford Coppola, he had hit after hit after hit after hit. I mean, some of the most important films ever made. And nowadays, I feel like he's just struggling to find an audience. Like Twixt, he made that horror film Twixt, and like I saw it, maybe two other people, and people are like, that's Francis Ford Coppola? That's the guy, Godfather, The Conversation? I mean, they're kind of like, but the point is that he's like struggling with the rest of us. So if Francis Ford Coppola has a struggle, that's a little eye-opening for artists in this country. I think it'd be awesome if we could all pool together and start our own studios. Kind of like U of A. So U of A, the history of U of A is, 1920s, and Mary Pickford, D.W. Griffith, Charlie Chaplin, they're like, beep, you guys, we're going to start our own studio and call it United Artists. And they did, and it was independent within all of the other big studios that were there, RKO, stuff like that, and they had their own thing. And I think that's the way to do it, is find people you like, people you can trust, people who are hardworking, and not 20 directors all fighting each other. You should have, there's the director, there's the writers, there's producers, and they're all working together to make this stuff. But I don't know. I think that's way off your topic.
It's good to have. I mean,
Cut.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Yeah, I didn't have too many questions here. I guess the one you have not yet answered directly, at least, is sort of what advice would you offer to young filmmakers trying to make it today? Like in terms of what kind of stuff should they produce? How should they try getting it out there?
Okay.
Is there any hope at all?
Yeah, I believe there's hope. I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Yeah.
I am an artist. That's what I can, and I am all about the art. I am not about commerce. I'm old-fashioned enough to believe that they are at war with each other. That art is art, commerce is commerce, and if you're lucky, you make art that can also find an audience that's willing to pay for it. So it doesn't matter if you're a painter, a sculptor, a filmmaker, a writer, an actor. You're always going to be rubbing up against the commerce, because the commerce is the people. And the people, if I may be blunt, they're a little obtuse in that they will only go to things that are like pre-approved. Most people, for example, like your peer's father.
Yeah.
So this last winter, he and his wife went to a showing of Oscar-nominated films. It's almost like they have to be told what's good. And the ironic thing is those aren't even the good films half the time. They're just what would have been pre-approved by the crowd to be special. But the point is did he go to the Chicago Film Festival? No. Did he go to the Chicago Jewish Film Festival? No. The Children's Festival? No. The Horror Film Festival? Any of the dozens of film festivals that are in Chicago or around Chicago? No. They decided to go to the showing of Oscar-nominated films because those must be the good ones, right? That's because they're the ones that made money. They're the ones that were approved. That'd be the same as saying Britney Spears is a better singer than Frank Sinatra because she made more money in a shorter duration than Frank Sinatra did. It's asinine. Nobody in their right mind is going to say, yes, Britney Spears is a better artist. But if you're only following the money, that's a problem. Because anything that is abstract is always going to be an adversary to the money. Artists like Terrence Malick, legendary Terrence Malick, his work is so formalist and so abstract that the general public, the crowd, are not going to go see his films. And that's a fact. They don't. I've sat in the audience for the last 3 films, and it's been me alone. They closed after like 2 days. But in the end, are people going to be, talking about some movie that made a lot of money? Or are they going to be studying and remember Terrence Malick? Of course they're going to remember Terrence Malick. They're going to remember the artist more than the commerce. The commerce is like fashion. Like right now, Adidas is back. The white on black Adidas shoes are hip again. Like those were worn by Run DMC and the Beastie Boys circa 1986. Okay, so now they're back again. But it's fashion. It comes and it goes. It makes money and it goes away. Art, I believe, is always there and it will always be there. And that's why you have museums. That's why you have curators. That's why you have film restoration and curation of those things, because it is important. It's important what humans make. So I think the advice that I would have for all of us, not just kids, but all filmmakers today, I think you should definitely make your films. You should not acquiesce to, I got to make what's going to make the most money, because they already do. Like, why would you make another comic book film? They already have, Marvel has those films slated, I believe, for the next decade. What are you going to bring to that? I believe that you should make the films that you believe in. You should make the stories that are personal to you. I mean, I really do look to those 1970s filmmakers because I believe in that ideology. I believe that if you have something to say, it is probably the best medium in the world to say it. Like films for me are like magical. You can't get the same feel in a novel or a poem or contemporary dance or even theater. It is a blending of all of the art forms: visual, audio, performance, writing, costumes, makeup, lights, sets. It is a world of make-believe where you're telling stories that is unlike anything ever created. Now, the visual, whatever you call it, you put on the 3D thing, that'll be the future. But for right now, film, I really believe that you should make the projects that you want to make. And if you hit it big and you get offered a chance to make those other films, the ones that are commerce, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to turn that down, because that would be kind of stupid, depending on what it is. I mean, if you have the chance to do something huge, that you should probably, take that opportunity. But I think at the same time, you have to ask yourself why. I mean, I think that in this country in particular, there's just this the cup is runneth over. How many houses do you need? How many cars do you need? Do you need to have a house in Paris, one in Aspen, one in LA, and then take a vacation somewhere else? I mean, I think that you don't really need that much money, is my point. That you don't really have to wait for, God, I need a Transformer so I can, clear 20 million as the director. You can get by in very little, like Terrence Malick does. Mm-hmm. But I think Gus Van Sant is more shrewd. That Gus Van Sant is like, yes, I'll make one for you, and it'll win an Oscar, or many, Good Will Hunting. Yeah. And I'll take my fee, and I'll go make what I really wanted to make. Elephant, Paranoid Park, Jerry. These films that nobody's heard of, but they're awesome because they are personal films that have something to say, and that's the things, in my opinion, that are remembered. As far as the film school thing, I don't know. I think Werner Herzog has a point that film school has become, I don't know, a little bit of a trap. That there are people who go to these film schools and they will be in debt for the rest of their lives. $100,000 plus to go to these film schools, and there's no guarantee when you're done that you're going to get a job. I don't know. I mean, in my day, I went to the schools because that's what you were supposed to do. I think a lot of the people in your generation now are starting to look at that and go, man, maybe that's not the right choice. Maybe I don't need to go to college. Now, I believe you should go because it's an important step in your life that's more than just a piece of paper that says BA, BFA, MFA. It's where you learn who you are. It's how you learn how to interact with other human beings. You learn the culture, good or bad, of humanity. I think college is it's real world. You get out of high school, fake world, and you go to college, I believe, is the real world. And it's on you. Nobody's going to motivate you. Nobody's going to ride your ass. It's like, did you do your paper? No. Okay, done. I'm not going to talk to you about it. I'm not going to call your parents. It's like, you fail. That's it. You either do it or you don't. And I think that's an important thing to learn. However, going to art school, man, I don't know. It's because it's not, there's no guarantee that just because you go to an art school, even the best. I know people who went to SCAD in Savannah College of Art and Design. I know people who went to RISD. I know people who went to Cal Arts. I know people who, American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I know people who've gone like the top of the top, and like you check up on them, like, oh, how you doing? It's like, well, I'm a barista now. And because it's a hard freaking rap, man. Making art in America and making a living doing it. God. So college for that? I don't know, because I think what you could do is you could become a PA. You sign up to be a PA, and you go from shoot to shoot, you're a PA. And whatever, if you want to be in the camera department, you work your way up there. If you want to work your way up to directing, you're making your way in through those doors. But that doesn't cost you anything. You get paid to do it. And I believe that if you really hustled and showed people how professional you are, you could get further than somebody who just graduated from USC. Because there's a lot of kids who just graduated from USC. And if you're a writer-director who graduated from USC, why is that person going to get a break and that one doesn't? The first thing I would always say is luck.
Mm-hmm.
If Tom Cruise's kid, and I don't even know, I'm just making this up, if I don't even know who they are. Tom Cruise's kid, X, is at USC right now. When he gets out, he's Tom Cruise's kid.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to have a history of legacy of doors open to him since he was 5 at Christmas parties. He's going to have the entire Hollywood system, he or she, sorry, at their, literally at their feet.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm Tom Cruise's kid. I want to make movies,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll give you a shot. There's no doubt that person's gonna have that way in. Anarnold Schwarzenegger's kids, whatever, any of the nepotism that is Hollywood. I mean, you see it all the time with acting. I mean, Angelina Jolie. Yeah, she just did it all on her own. Didn't matter that Jon Voight, one of the most successful character actors of all time, was her dad, and she didn't have any doors open to her. I'm going to change my name to Voight. I did it by myself. That's like Trump saying, I did it all by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy didn't give me any money. Oh, whoops, he did, $60 million.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. The point is that luck is one way those people will have a break.
Mm-hmm.
But I really believe that if you have like a great story and you show talent, you will definitely have people look at your scripts. It doesn't mean they'll make them, but they'll definitely look at them. They might even buy them. So it's like Quentin Tarantino, he survived because he would sell scripts.
Mm-hmm.
He sold True Romance. Ridley Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Scott. He sold Natural Born Killers,
Mm-hmm.
Oliver Stone. So before the world even got to know him as a director, he was already selling these really cutting edge 1990s independent great scripts with
Mm-hmm.
great freaking characters, great dialogue, and that will do you wonders
Mm-hmm.
if you can create that kind of work, that kind of content. Now, the truth of if you're going to commerce, to get your film made, it's all about the cast. And I hate it. I hate it so much. And so does everybody else. Anybody who's honest is going to say that that's absolutely nonsense. That I could have the awesomest screenplay ever. I could have Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
But if I don't have a name attached to it, most distribution companies and most producing companies aren't even going to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first question they're going to ask you. Is like, oh, is anybody interested in it? That little thing that we know through your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the first thing he said? Oh, Kirk Cameron likes my script.
Yeah.
Because that's the selling point, right? That if you have a name attached to it, Quentin Tarantino had Harvey Keitel,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped make Reservoir Dogs. If you have Tom Hanks interested in your script, you are golden.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you go to somebody and say, hey, here's my thing, like, oh, it's awesome, I get 20 of these across my desk a day, what else do you have for me? Oh, Tom Hanks is actually interested. And like, okay,
Yeah.
cancel all the calls for the day, let's make your film.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? That is unfortunately how the business is really run on the commerce end. If you have a name, you're golden, like right out of the gate. So those are two things. Get lucky, nepotism, whatever. Have a star, and I mean a star. I'm not talking Kirk Cameron.
Yeah.
I'm talking if you have Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, Denzel Washington, Kate Winslet, Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm talking names, a bona fide money bank. Your film will get made. If you can get it into their hands, if you can track those people down through their agent, manager, you run into them at Spagos, whatever. If you can get them interested, you'll get there. The other one I said, of course, is having a great product. Now, this is not just, I don't know if this is just for writers, directors, or if you're talking about anybody who wants to go into business. Do you mean anybody?
I mean, anybody, yeah.
I think you got to have great product.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get into cinematography, you got to have a reel that really shows what you can do. And I think that would be anything. If you're an actor, you got to have a great, online monologue that you can send to people. Because a lot of auditions now aren't done face to face. A lot of the digital world, a lot of it's just send me a monologue.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be perfect. It's got to be tight. It's got a great sound. and for a writer director, the big one, I just think that if you have a passion project that you wrote and it's really awesome, I would not write one draft and like I wrote a draft, I'm done. I would do multiple drafts. The writing is in the rewriting, and I would have it solid. I would have it so solid that when you send it out to people, you're not embarrassed that there aren't. And I mean, and I don't just mean narrative. I mean like the most obvious things, punctuation, spelling, the format. The goddamn format. It has to have the format. Everybody has decided this is what the format is going to be. If you send it out to the wrong format, they're not even going to read it. They'll go to page 1 and they'll just throw it out because it shows unprofessional practices. You know, it's about being a professional. As far as the making of the money, you know, business is business, and I'm no businessman, but I definitely understand the economics, supply and demand. That if you're making a film that doesn't have an audience, I think you got to know your audience. Obviously, like what they taught us at film schools. I went to San Francisco State University. I went to CU, Colorado. I think the point is that if you're going to do first films, get your foot in the door, genre pictures seem to be the way. Horror films, as a genre, almost always make money. They're almost always easy to make. You don't have to have stars. It's like the one genre where you're like, you're given a pass. You don't have to have Tom Hanks because Tom Hanks doesn't do horror. It's okay to have an unknown cast. That's where a lot of people get noticed. Kevin Bacon, Johnny Depp. Those people all started with a horror film. Johnny Depp showed up and auditioned for Wes Craven for Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. His daughter was there, and she's like, "Oh my God, he's hot. He's good looking. Dad, you should call him back." And that's so he called him back and did it. And basically, Wes Craven's daughter started Johnny Depp's career, more or less. Kevin Bacon, he was in the Friday the 13th 1, maybe 2. You know, got killed off pretty quickly. He's definitely A-list today. So so that's what they taught us, is make a horror film. 90 pages, not 120. 90 pages, which to their meaning, you know, a minute per page. 90 minutes, one location, casted with unknowns, people who are hungry. It doesn't have to be the best, that's probably Thomas. It doesn't have to be the best crew or whatever. And if it does well, like all those films or Paranormal Activity, that can pretty much jump your career. And a lot of people did it that way. I have to let him in, then we can continue. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, definitely.
So much to say. There's so much to talk about on these topics.
This is great. It's good stuff.
What else?
I think that's all I had written down specifically. I mean, is there anything else you want to mention just about distribution, how it's changed?
I didn't even get started on that. I didn't even finish all that stuff.
Good.
So a genre distribution company, Cone out of Salt Lake City. The only thing they're interested in are horror and sci-fi / horror. Because that's what they can sell. They can sell it in China, they can sell it in Japan, they can sell it a little bit foreign distribution. Those films make a fortune because they didn't cost much to produce. They buy it for not even, you know, what you paid for it. And they go out in the world and people watch that stuff because as long as there are teenagers, as long as there are sleepovers, as long as there are, you know, that kind of lifestyle, there will be horror films because they love that stuff. If you can make a PG-13 horror film, 90 pages, man, you can make a fortune, and you can really get your foot in the door. And that's the one genre that I think anybody with any business sense is like, that's what you make. Come on in.
Hello, Thomas.
Now that one guy that we were talking about, they have a genre also. Their genre is the Christian film, the Christian filmmaking. So obviously that's the kind of stuff that they're going to play to church groups, inspirational gatherings. I have worked on 2 of those. I worked on one film that was Christian written, directed, and I did a play that was Christian written and directed. The Christian movie did very well. It did very well, but like for me being on it, it was a nightmare because it was like the paradigm was there was a lynching, there was racism, there was shooting, there was dragging a guy through the streets because he was Mexican, but the 2 leads couldn't kiss.
Right.
You can't show love, but violence, racism, the bad stuff, you can do that totally because Jesus wants that. That's totally off the top.
Yeah.
Anyway, every one of those genres is a viable way to get your foot in the door, but none will ever be as successful as horror films. The very first narrative films were horror films. That people love stories around the campfire, dark, show humanity's strengths, weaknesses, and a villain. People love a villain, supernatural or not. People are always drawn to that. Now, that doesn't mean that I think you should spend the rest of your life making horror films because, I mean, who wants to do that? I mean, Wes Craven, sure, but eventually you want to make other things. You don't want to be known as just one idea, one type of genre, but I think it's a great way to get your foot in the door. So it's supply and demand. I mean, if these people have these limited amount of money and what they're going to spend on it, I think you need to know your audience. If you're going to make it for that high-end art crowd, myself, the kind of films I go to, I'm alone in the theater when I see those films. They're there for a day.
Yeah.
People walking out. The few people are there. Tree of Life. I went to Tree of Life opening day because I never miss a Malick opening day. I think 5 people walked out, and everybody else after it was just like, "My God, that was terrible." And it's like, is it terrible because it's a bad film, or is it terrible because you don't get it? Those are 2 totally different definitions of bad, right? It wasn't bad because the acting was terrible. It wasn't bad because the narrative was terrible or terrible sound or, Emmanuel Lubezki, God, he's a terrible cinematographer. That's just absolutely terrible. It was terrible because it was a hard pill to swallow for the crowd because they didn't get it. And when you don't get it, it breeds fear. Fear breeds hate, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Welcome to humanity. That's why they don't like that stuff. It's just too difficult. So if your first film is a Malickian art film, I would send it to Europe. They will love you. The French will love you. The Germans will love you. The Russians will love you. Spain, Italy, they love that stuff because it's more of their culture. America, you want to make money, you got to make that scream. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween. They love that stuff. It makes money every single time, even the bad ones. But if you make a good one, like a really, like Raw, the film Raw, if you make something that really has a punch to it, man, people will go crazy for that stuff, and it could become a cult classic, and it could start your career. So like Tobe Hooper, I mean, like Spielberg called him up, and he's like, "Yeah, I want to make the best ghost story ever made. It's Poltergeist." And Tobe was like, "Sure, I'll do it." He hated the process. Spielberg was on him every 10 seconds. They're fighting all the time, blah, blah, blah. I was like, this is not, when I was sweating out in Texas making my film, that was more pleasurable than this. Because the more money it's on the line, the less freedom you're going to have. I think that is a known fact.
Right.
That if the budget is $250 million, you as the director, you're going to have less say. But if you can make something for cheap, you have total control. Paul Thomas Anderson, Stanley Kubrick, where you have final cut, there are no approvals. You make it, and they're going to go for it. Of course, you have to build yourself up. So real quick, Paul Thomas Anderson. The storyline is this: he has a little bit of nepotism going for him. He like myself, is from L.A., grew up in the Valley. He gets into NYU. the pinnacle, right? Or the pinnacle at the time. Oh my God, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. He gets in there. So excited. First assignment, write a 2-page screenplay, no dialogue, just description.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, okay, I'm going to test these people because, he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He rips off, he steals David Mamet's Hoffa. Little interlude where the character is driving at night. He's a truck driver, and the way he keeps himself awake is he takes cigarettes, puts them in his fingers, and it's burning like this, so if he starts to fall asleep, it burns his hand and wakes him up. No dialogue. It's just a simple, awesome description from David Mamet. David Mamet, Pulitzer Prize-winning, awesome writer. He takes that, steals it, plagiarizes, takes it, turns it into the professor. The professor's like, this is crap. Nobody would ever make this. This is terrible writing. He's like, okay, so this is how it works here. That's David Mamet. This guy said no good. Beep you. Went to the bursar's office, got his money back, took the money, went out and made coffee and cigarettes, or cigarettes and coffee, with Miguel Ferrer, who is George Clooney's, what is that? He must be George Clooney's cousin.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he goes out and he makes that film. One location. It's shot in Johnny's Diner, I believe, Bakersfield. Shot the whole thing in a diner. Got permission to use the diner, mostly on days off or when they're cleaning the kitchen, whatever. It goes in there, shoots with this small cast. It's basically a conversation. There's people at a table, very 1990s. Catches the attention of Reiser Entertainment Distribution Company, all these other people, right off the bat because it was so awesome. So he took the money directly from the school, made it his film, went out there, got distribution or approval for his next film. He made a film called Sydney with Reiser Entertainment. They totally screwed him over, like most horror stories when you hit the Hollywood.
Yeah.
Totally destroyed it. Wouldn't let him have a cut. Decimated it. Retitled it Hard 8.
Yeah.
Terrible experience for him. But once again, the finished project and the people he met on that, people like John C. Reilly, so on and so forth, eventually led to him being able to make Boogie Nights, which he had already made short films of anyway. He makes Boogie Nights with a very short budget and a bunch of character actors, a bunch of people who now are known, but at that time were like, oh, that guy's, I can't place that person, but they're in blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Eventually, those are people like Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy.
Yeah.
Anyway, huge success. Right up there with your Pulp Fictions, your Reservoir Dogs, your Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee. In the 1990s, a huge rebirth of independent film like the 1970s. And the rest is history. All because some jackass professor at NYU didn't even know who David Mamet was, read that, decided to be tough on a student who didn't need to be. It's David freaking Mamet. I mean, I would love to see what the competition was.
Yeah.
Took his money and went that route. So I think that you can make it happen if you have good stuff, if you bust your ass, if you find a way to circumvent the system. You can make the system, basically your lapdog, like Stanley Kubrick. So Stanley Kubrick and Paul Thomas Anderson, they're like bullets and guns. They're very similar artists. Kubrick almost fails at a K through 12, doesn't go to college, learns by going on sets. But when he was 14, he was shooting professional photography for Look magazine. That's like the number 2 magazine in America at the time. Like 14, bona fide genius. Bored through K through 12. That's why he failed out. It's like I can do circles around you. There isn't an idea you have that I haven't had. And not disrespect to his elder professors. He's like, the guy's a bona fide genius. What are you going to do? You're going to teach Mark Zuckerberg how to write code? The guy invented the code. He's thinking on code you're not even like in your availability of intellectual property. He works on some independent stuff. Eventually he catches the attention of Kirk Douglas. Like I said, A-lister Kirk Douglas. He's like, oh man, you should do Spartacus for me. Oh man, you should do Path to Glory for me. They fight the entire time because it's Kubrick versus some jackass with a nice chin. And they're fighting and they're fighting and they're fighting. And he's fighting the cinematographer. He's fighting the writer because he's smart. He knows he's smarter than all of them. He rewrites the script for, which one was it? it must have been either Paths of Glory or Spartacus, rewrites it.
Mm-hmm.
It wins an Academy Award for Best Screenplay. He doesn't even get credit for it, even though it's his script.
Yeah.
He never wins an Academy Award except for like achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually he says, forget it. He makes friends with John Calley, Jan Harlan at Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, this guy's amazing. He's like, okay, that's awesome. We agree. I'm amazing. He moves to England.
Mm-hmm.
He never comes back. He never leaves. He goes there, spends the rest of his life, makes all of the films that from there forward, Lolita to the very end, Eyes Wide Shut, masterpieces. Every single one of them, every single one a different genre, every single one of them groundbreaking, changes the way cinema's done forever. Anybody who knows anything about cinema looks at Kubrick. You may not like him, but you definitely acknowledge that he is the man. And I don't care who you talk to, Spielberg, William Friedkin. It is universal that at the end of time, the lists of Homo sapiens that made films, at the very top is going to be Stanley Kubrick.
Mm-hmm.
And if not the very top, he's definitely like tied at the top. There is no doubt about it. The guy changed the way movies are made forever for a good thing. This is a guy who did not make commerce, is the point I was making before. Yeah. He never made commerce. The closest he got to commerce was The Shining. Mm-hmm. He's sitting around with his wife. He's depressed. Why won't anybody like go see my movies? Until 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I need to find something commercial. Gets the rights for The Shining, has backing through Warner Brothers, total control of him though, not Warner Brothers, decides to make it, and once again, it's a failure.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later that people look at The Shining the way they look at The Shining now.
Mm-hmm.
It was a failure. Even Stephen King hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's considered one of the most important horror films, if not films, period. Everybody knows The Shining. Mm-hmm. Everybody. It didn't make any money. Mm-hmm. So they're once again, it's like you go for the money, there's no guarantee you're going to make it. So the point is from there on, it's not even a matter of final cut. A lot of directors talk about final cut. It's not even a final cut. There is no discussion. Mm-hmm. What Stanley sends you is what is there. He has total approval of everything. Casting, shots, crew, locations, nothing. There is not a single thing that he does not have control of. And that's exactly the way it should be for someone like Stanley Kubrick, because he is a bona fide genius, an auteur. Mm-hmm. He has control over everything. Barry Lyndon, the costume department, they're like, you know, the outfits that they're wearing, we can get away with, you know, this, that. And he's like, no, I want the exact buttons. It has to be the exact buttons that were at the time. And it's like, Stanley, they're going to be 20 feet away from the camera. It's like, first of all, you don't know what I'm doing by camera. Mm-hmm. And second of all, shut up. I want the exact buttons. Every detail. Every single thing. Conning NASA out of their Zeiss lenses. Mm-hmm. Because he already had the B&C cameras ready to put them on, to remount them on. I mean, the guy is a chess player, and he is 15 moves ahead of everybody else. The problem with that is obviously Stanley Kubrick's life, mm-hmm. that he was considered a recluse, unknown, uncredited, didn't even win an Academy Award except for special achievements for 2001. Never won an Academy Award for Best Director. Mm-hmm. If you ever need a reason to not believe that the Oscars are any good, your parents. Yeah. Stanley Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock, never won. Mm-hmm. That should tell you something. That Bradley Cooper is going to win next March, Best Director. Stanley Kubrick didn't win. Anyway, it's enough of that. I'm on my soapbox. The point is that he is an auteur. He is somebody who chose to make art, to break down walls, to reinvent the way things are done, to not go the commerce route, and he succeeded. Now, is he 1 in a billion? Of course he is. Mm-hmm. But the point is I think it's better to strive for that 1 in a billion than to go the routes of Fast and Furious 10, Batman 5000. I mean, we were all shocked when Christopher Nolan took on the Batman account. We were all shocked because Memento was so awesome. Mm-hmm. Following was awesome. And then he took on the Batman films and it was like really? Mm-hmm. Like, you were way better than that. And of course, they were huge successes. Millions and millions. He never had to work again. Mm-hmm. But, you know, Memento, that's art. That's something totally different. He makes it with his brother. So I don't know, man. I think that my advice is, if you don't need 15 cars, 6 houses, the adulation of the people, mm-hmm. if you're secure within yourself, you can live like a Terrence Malick, a Stanley Kubrick, a Gus Van Sant, Even the Coen brothers, they live, up north, Minneapolis, St. Paul. They live off the grid. Whatever they make, they just had a new film come out. Whatever they make, people like it almost every single time. And it's because they don't go that route. It's never going to be Batman 50, a Joel Coen film. It's never going to happen. They do not have that interest. Werner Herzog is probably like the one that you could mention for everybody in this TED Talk. Like Werner Herzog, quote, "I don't need Hollywood, they don't need me," end quote. He is completely uninterested in anything, in any way, shape, or form, in being in a studio. He needs complete control. He's an auteur. You're not going to pick my cast. You're not going to pick my editors. You're not going to pick my DP. You're not going to tell me what to shoot on. You're not going to tell what my story is. You're not going to come after it's been done and say this is to be cut, that is to be elongated, this is to be redone. No, absolutely not. I am going to make my film. I am Werner Herzog, and I am going to do it my way. Take it or leave it. And a lot of them left it, but the ones that did take it, he's Werner Herzog. Now, that does not mean that I think that people in your generation should go out there and just be like so foolishly confident that you're going to shut every door that opens for you and step on every foot. And I don't think you should spit on your professors like Paul Thomas Anderson did it because he tested them. That's why he did it, not because he was a dick. He was proving something, and he was right. I think you should respect those people because they know the business and they can open doors for you. I think that it's a little stupid to think that, oh my God, I too am Kubrick right now. It's like Kubrick did the work for years before he became Stanley Kubrick. There are people out there that can help you, that can open doors for you. You should respect that. You should always respect that. I think I have to throw that in there since I'm talking to kids in high school, that your ego. People don't forget in that industry, I'll tell you that much. If you act unprofessionally, you will be known as somebody who acts unprofessionally, and it will close doors for you that you'll never get open again. In some of your applications for colleges, I was very careful in the wording that I was not going to. I would mention your accolades, but in a way that is cautious, so they wouldn't be like, oh, well, this kid's going to come in here because he's already done these things. And he's going to be like, well, I don't need you at all because I did the Horror Film Festival in Chicago. There are a lot of people who are going to look at that and be standoffish. It's ironic. The more lines you have on your resume, the more people will be afraid to work with you. This is something from my own experience. When I was first starting acting in the 1990s, I'd have a line or two. I did this play, did that play. The people are so much like, oh yeah, let's bring him in, blah, blah, blah. The resume I have now, I've got film festivals, awards, all this stuff that I've done. Like all of a sudden it becomes, for a certain kind of director, it becomes, I don't want to hire him because he's going to tell me how to do my job or whatever. You're walking like a fine line. So, in terms of the kids who are out there who have done things like yourself and you're applying for colleges, just make sure don't showboat it, don't be egotistical. There are people out there who have vast amounts of knowledge and they can help you if you don't push them away right off the bat because you did this, because you did that. I mean, I think even if you've won an Academy Award, which I don't care about, but it's the pinnacle of awards, let's face it, I still think that you would have to approach every business interaction with some taste and some class and some sophistication. Instead of like, I won the Academy Award, don't you know, you silly earthling. Don't you know who I am? There's nothing more annoying than that. There's just nothing. I think you have to realize that you're all in it together. And the biggest piece of advice I would like to give all of us, the people who you choose to work with will either make your life a living hell or a success. The partners that have existed in the world of cinema, Scorsese and De Niro, they were never better than when they worked together, and they were never worse when they didn't. There was a auteur filmmaker, writer, producer, director, and a Brando-esque, groundbreaking actor, and when they were together, my God. Terrence Malick, Chivo, Emmanuel Lubezki, and Sarah Green, his producing partner, and Jack Fisk, his art director, production designer. They come together, and like it's just gold, and it's just gold. And he doesn't make many films, but just gold, gold, gold. His next film has none of them, so we'll see. He's breaking off on his own, but we'll see how that goes. Cronenberg, his entire unit is his unit. He's the unit he's worked with forever, and they all work together. So when you find your ensemble, your enclave, your group, I think that's something you should nurture, and you should, if you can find those people that you work with and work well with, that'll be the biggest luck you could ever have. Because when you're on shows and people hate each other, or they're constantly fighting or disagreeing, I mean, it's just a nightmare. I mean, you're working with these people for 28 to like 35 days, and it just sucks when you're with those people. Yeah, I think you got to pick the people you work with. If you can find a producer who doesn't want to be a director and is a hands-on, so like a Joel Silver. So Predator, 1987. Joel Silver is the hands-on producer, and you have Arnold is the huge star. Of course, he wasn't quite a big star. That he was on his way, no doubt about it. And John McTiernan, director. It was the first film that John McTiernan had ever made for Hollywood, and because he had Joel Silver, every single thing was taken care of because Joel was there every single day. And a lot of directors hate that because, but Joel Silver is not that kind of producer. Joel Silver is in the mud. He's freezing, getting bit by mosquitoes. If it doesn't work, he finds out why it's not working. If you need more money, he gets you more money. He is there working all the time to make it happen. If you find a hands-on producer, Joel Silver, Robert Evans, somebody who is really going to bust his ass, Coppola for Lucas. Coppola fought for Lucas, man. He made his career. The studios hated American Graffiti. And he was like, they play American Graffiti up at Santa Rosa. They play it for an audience. The audience is going crazy, cheering, stamping, getting up, standing ovation. Lucas walks after the show to the lobby. All the executives there, all the huge Hollywood executives, they're like, God, this film is just going to work, is it? It's just not going to work. And it's like, what? Coppola, his producer, is like, you should be on your knees thanking this young man. This guy is going to make you a fortune. You should get on your knees and bow before George Lucas. And of course, eventually that became THX 1138, same problem. And then Star Wars, it was the end. It was huge. But he had Coppola in his corner. American Zoetrope. LA trained, they all left LA for smart reasons, went up to the Bay, started their own, rented out a building, started American Zoetrope. They had awesome writers, Milos Forman, awesome directors, cast. They had Robert Duvall, James Caan at the time. They had this huge group of artists, and they made some of the best films ever, but arguably the 1970s. They chose to make independent. They chose to go their own way, and Coppola was the daddy. He was the daddy there. He was the one who Hollywood was calling them every single day. Francis, please make something. You can imagine how lucky, right? Please make this movie for us.
Yeah.
Please. And he's like, I don't think so. Unless you're going to do one for me. It's like, I'll make The Godfather, but I'm not going to make The Godfather the way you want it. I am Italian. This script is degrading. It's crap. I'm going to rewrite it with Mario Puzo, who wrote the novel. It's going to be Shakespearean, about a king and his three sons. We're going to do it my way. We're going to do it with my people. We're going to shoot it where I want to shoot it and how I want to shoot it. And then after that, you're going to pay so I can make the conversation, which is the film I really want to make. Robert Evans was the producer on that at the time. They fought a lot, of course, over casting, but eventually they all acquiesced to Coppola, became a masterpiece, considered one of the best films ever made, ever, period. And took the money, made the conversation. and the next year, like 2 out of the top 4 nominated were both Coppola films. You can imagine. It's like number 1 for Best Picture, Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather Part 2. Number 2 for Best Picture, Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. Gee, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's gonna win
Tough
anyway.
choice, tough
We'll
choice.
give it to number 2.
Yeah.
But can you imagine being nominated twice in the same category the same year? But that never would have happened if he didn't have someone like Robert Evans back in his corner. I mean, they fought over the casting, but everything else. If you can get that awesome group of people to work with, that really is, that would be the blessing, the ultimate blessing. So when you go to film school, if you find the people who aren't like your roommate at your 16 millimeter thing, if you find people who are as hardworking as you are and bring it as much as you do, and I don't want to get personal on this because I think I'm sure Jay is a wonderful lady. But like when I saw that experience, I was like taken aback by that because it was like, you know, she has a green lit to make her thing and she walks. Why would you do that? Like you had the chance. We gave you the chance to be an artist and you walked. Those chances don't come around that often. Like it was right there. You know, Michaela, I'm cast and I'm in it for 2 months and then I walk.
Nope.
You got to pick your people so carefully. So it's going to happen anyway, but that's why you're going to have a good producer because you'll have contracts. You'll have, you know, if you stand us up, Michaela, this is what's going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
You're going to pay our legal fees. You're going to pay. You know, and that's what a good producer will do. They'll cover your back. A good cinematographer. You got to have somebody who has a vision but is not going to fight your vision. So Michael Mann and Emmanuel Lubezki. God, I don't want to take up a whole class. I'm sorry. I apologize. This is one last thing. One last thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So director versus director of photography. Michael Mann's Ali, 2001. Michael Mann, writer, director, producer, auteur. Chivo, Emmanuel Lubezki, awesome cinematographer. Michael Mann, like Stanley Kubrick, you're going to shoot it my way. It's going to be the way I want it. It's going to be handheld when I want it. It's going to be on a Steadicam when I want it. It's going to be a helicopter when I want it. It's going to be digital, and then film, and then back to digital, and then back to film. And we're going to do it my way. Chivo's like, you're an idiot. This is a nightmare. I hate this. I'll never work with you again. This is the worst experience I've ever had in my life. I'm Chivo. I'm an awesome photographer, no doubt about it. One of the best. I don't need you to tell me how to light it. And he's like, well, you know, it's not really about that. It's my film. I want it my way. And who was right? I think Michael Mann is right. He's the director. The director is the runner of the show. If the director wants to film Will Smith walking through the streets handheld, and he wants people's faces abstracting the shot, they're shooting through people walking in front of the lens, and you just see Will Smith for like a second, and Chivo's like, God, he's your star. Should we like have his close-up all the time? He's like, no. I want it to be like you're on the streets. Like you're there with Ali in the crowd. It's before he goes to the fight. Never worked with each other again. Hated each other.
Yeah.
But great film and beautiful looking for both of their parts. But if you pick a good team, I think there's constructive criticism, and then there's people who will just throw you under the bus, literally. And I think my advice is choose the people that you go into battle. I'll say the word battle very, very carefully. Because you're going to be with them a long, long time, especially a producer, because it's not just about making the film. It's the end. It's distribution, which is what this is supposed to be about, the indie production. Indie distribution, I mean. You got to have somebody who's going to, like, keep going. Because that's when the hard work really starts. Like, the art is the fun part, right? For the most part. It's the part after that. That's the boring part. That's the banking. That's the submissions and contracts and selling and what kind of like split you get if you do get distribution. That's the stuff where if you have somebody who really, because at every school you guys go to, there are going to be people who are going there for producing. So if you get into one of these fancy film schools, the people who are going for directing, writing, people going for camera, people want to be producers. If you could find one of those kids, man, and they're getting trained by the best, if they're at USC, wherever, their teachers are going to be people who are really going to teach them contracts, contract law, what to do, what not to do, how to cover your ass, because that's what they're there to do. And I believe that if you could find those people, that's just worth its weight in gold. If you just go out in the world alone and you're all on it by yourself, Herzog.
Mm-hmm.
There's freedom in that, but I believe if you have a team to help you, you'll get further faster, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's an hour and 15 minutes.